Good afternoon. Hey, I'm sitting here. I'm editing. Oh, it's editing season. Okay. We've written 18 books, and all the 18 books by Shimiko Do are available on blurb.com. Okay. www.blurb.com, and we're busy editing Kia Chinese book now. And then I'm also busy with editing Shimiko Do's books, 19, 20, 21, 20. So this is just editing season. Kia's book should be ready. I think we shall publish it August or so. And then these books, the book 21, book 19, 20, 21, 22 by Shimiko Do will be published around February. But I thought I should just take a break and talk to you about the Bill of Rights. It struck me in the last 2 weeks as I began to speak and we spoke back and forth. It struck me by the number of inboxes that I received and by the number of inquisitions that came through. It struck me how ignorant a lot of South Africans are about the Constitution. People are shocked. And I mean, when someone asked me for personal information, I said, I can't give it because it's the right to privacy. People said, can you do that? We thought everybody can ask you for anything. I said, no. So that had me thinking. And I've done a short presentation now. I've been, I got bored from editing and I put together some information I want to read out to you now. And my plea to you is you have to know your rights. You have to know your rights. You must understand that the Constitution is the ultimate law of the country. And if you don't know any rights, if you don't know any of your rights, you can't exercise them. And if you don't exercise any rights, you suffer in the midst of plenty. I mean, you are protected, but because of your ignorance, you are taken for a ride, and you end up bowing to forces that have no authority at all to exercise over you. So I've written a few notes here on the Bill of Rights. It's chapter 2 of your Constitution. And there are a few things I want you to understand, because it's against this backdrop that we are fighting our religious battle. I'm reiterating and I'm repeating myself for a purpose. When the Civil Rights Commission in 2017 submitted their recommendations on the regulation of religion, the COGDA Portfolio Committee in Parliament rejected their recommendations, citing three things: that your recommendations are unworkable. Unworkable means no provision is made for that, and there is no compelling enough reason to make special provision for the implementation. It's unworkable. We don't know where to put them. We don't know which aspect of the Constitution and which aspect of the laws that run the country to include them under. And they said, too, they are necessary. That means we have enough. Unnecessary means enough. Anything necessary is in need. The Parliament said there is no need. There is no need to regulate religion. It's unworkable to regulate religion. There is no need to regulate religion. But thirdly, Parliament said it's unconstitutional. It's against the Constitution. Don't forget, there are a lot of things that have come before Parliament that deemed it necessary for the Constitution to be revised, such as the land issue. But there must be compelling enough reason. See, a lot of people who have not been in government circles don't understand case for change. If we are going to create case for change, we must prove that within the present legal framework, within the present constitutional provisions, there isn't provision made, but there should be provision made. It's a compelling case. So when they came to Parliament, they did not create enough case for change. Parliament was not convinced that there was compelling enough reason to even consider a constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendments take 66% of the National Assembly. 66%. Yeah, that's a tall order. That's a tall order indeed. So they said, no, we reject them. As a matter of fact, go back. At least we expect the religious community to engage itself without government interference, without interference by any state organ. And at least let them come with a code of conduct, because we have enough. Unnecessary meant there is no necessity, there is no need. There are enough laws, there are enough agencies to deal with the grievances you presented before Parliament. Now, a lot of people get fed up because in their mind, they think freedom of religion is a necessary evil. It's tolerated. They think freedom of association is tolerated. No. The rights in the Constitution are not hierarchical. The right to land is no more important than the freedom of speech. The freedom of association is no less important than the right to education. People don't understand that. The Constitution talks about your vertical and horizontal application of rights. And it also talks about the indivisibility of human rights. That means though there are different rights, they cannot be divided. They cannot be separated. They are interdependent. The vertical application of rights is the Constitution protects the people against the state. The state cannot abuse people. But the horizontal application of the rights mean the state also protects one individual from another. We're trying to share this some individuals who don't understand this. I'm not only protected against the violation of my rights vertically by government or it's any organ of state. Between people, I'm also protected. And now I've written the Bill of Rights applies to all matters between citizens and the government. All matters. This means it applies in a vertical way between government and citizens, but it protects citizens from things done to them by the government. So the CLRI wanted to do things to us that the Constitution would say no. Parliament understands the Constitution. They wrote the Constitution. As an organ of state, as a Section 9 institution, the Civil Rights Commission had recommended that make us in charge of religion. Let us decide who gets licensed. Let us decide where they belong. Let us force them into peer review structures. Let us force them to belong to umbrella bodies. And the parliament says, no. These people are protected from that kind of abuse by you as a state organ. But then the rights also protect citizens from citizens. You can't come to my house and make demands. You can't go online. You can't go to social media and make demands on me. I'm protected by the Constitution. You can't rock up at my gate there and say, show me your marriage certificate. I'm protected. You can't say, stop associating. You can't come as a pastor's fraternity and say, you can't associate with that group. If you're going to operate in the city, you are forced. Every church in the city belongs to association. Individuals are protected from other individuals. But then there is also the principle of rights being divided into different categories which are not in hierarchical order. When you look at the Bill of Rights, there are three divisions. There are civil and political rights, and there are socio-economic rights, and there are collective and cultural rights. And religion features in all those. Civil, socio-economic, collective and cultural rights. And even though there are three categories, or we call them generations, first, second, and third generation rights, they're indivisible. They cannot be divided into categories. None is more important than the other. So a lot of people, naively so, because of their hate for religion, they think the Constitution tolerates religion. Constitution does not tolerate religion. The Constitution recognizes religion. As much as it recognizes your right to land, it recognizes your right to your religion. Please get this into your head. Naive people are still under the impression that government will wake up one day and take a religious right. Government has no power to do that. They have no more power to do that than they have the power to come here and take my house. Because I have a right to housing. The right to housing is equal to the right to life, is equal to the right to religion, is equal to the right to conscience, is equal to the right to freedom of speech. All rights are indivisible. Different generations, but they're indivisible. For example, for people to be able to use their right to vote effectively, they must also have rights like the right to stand and attend meetings, and the right to freedom of speech, and the right to association. Can you see that? Can you see that? The Constitution says you have a right to belong, be it to a political party of your choice or to a church of your choice. You have a right to demonstrate. When you come together and we demonstrate our faith in God, it's as much a right as when you put on our ANC t-shirts and demonstrate. You can't divide those rights. There is a myth out there that there are weak rights and strong rights. And the right to vote is stronger than the right to association. No. The rights are indivisible. The rights cannot be divided. There are three generations of rights, three categories: civil and political, socio-economic, and collective and cultural rights. And all of them are indivisible. There is no hierarchy. They didn't say, okay, you have a right to life. It's only Schedule 1. And you have a right to association, Schedule 2. And just their lower ranking, let's just tolerate religion. You have a right. No. There was a compelling reason to amend the Constitution regarding land expropriation without compensation. There would constitutionally have to be as compelling a reason to amend the freedom of religion. Please get that into your head. And you preachers and believers in Christ, even you Hindus, Muslims, and traditionalists, don't be fearful that, it's a weak right that can be taken away anytime. That's what Madame Kaluva and her company thought. That religious rights are just frivolous, they're just tolerated. No right is tolerated by the Constitution. Every right is sacrosanct. In the wording of the authors of it's sacrosanct. Now, the word sacrosanct is the word holy. Every right is holy. The right to freedom of association, the right to speech, the right to conscience, practicing what your conscience allows you to. Those are sacrosanct. And political rights are not the only sovereign rights. Every right is sovereign. People think now they can't take political rights, but they can take religious rights. No, that's not the case. Now, the Constitution also talks about rights and responsibilities. And this is where the confusion is coming in regarding abuses in churches. Now, let me just hasten to say, if you approach as abuse in churches, you're very discriminating approach. Abuse is abuse. In the eyes of the law, it would never matter if it happened in a nightclub or in a church service. There are no religious abuses. There are no social abuses. There are no economic abuses. Abuse is abuse. And people mistake in this. They see somebody make people eat grass. They see people make people eat snakes. And they think those are grievous abuses. More grievous than the employer preventing their employee to participate in union activities. No, the rights are not hierarchical. So the abuse is equal before the law. Now listen to this. I wrote here, for every right that a person has, there is usually a responsibility that is connected to that right. For example, you have a right of freedom of expression, but a responsibility not to tell deliberate lies about someone else. 2, there is a general responsibility to respect and be tolerant of the rights of others. For example, you enjoy the right to religious freedom and all beliefs are respected. You understand that? So that means in the exercise of my religious rights, I cannot trample underfoot another's. You also have the responsibility to respect other people's beliefs, rights and choices. So even if your faith condemns homosexuality, you are not allowed to discriminate against gay people. There is no right that says, I may not express what my belief thinks about gay people. But there is a responsibility not to discriminate against them. I said something in the empowerment conference, and I said it's amazing that the people who are most liberal about ideas of relativism, that there is no wrong or right, they're the most dogmatic when it comes to the beliefs of other people. Now, there is a new phobia rising, and it's a phobia for truth and a phobia for expression of honest opinion. Now, you cannot be so dogmatic about an expression of your opinion that it undermines mine. You have a right to say, Jesus Christ is the way. As much as you have a right to say, Muhammad is the last prophet. As much as you have to say, there is no God. As long as among those who say there is no God, that Jesus is Lord and Muhammad is the last prophet, there is no suppression of the belief and the freedom of expression of anybody. You understand what I'm saying to you? Now, when there is a conflict between your right and my right, how does the law deal with it? It says here, there are times when one's rights will conflict with the rights of another person. The South African Bill of Rights says it is acceptable in certain situations to limit rights. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of people have thrown out, no right is absolute. No right is absolute. And that does not only apply to religious rights, to all rights. No right in the Constitution is absolute. That does not only apply to freedom of religion, freedom of association. No. The Constitution foresaw that, the authors of the Constitution foresaw that. And this is what is written. There are times when one's rights will conflict with the rights of another. The South African Bill of Rights says it is acceptable in certain situations to limit rights. But the condition is, if it is reasonable to limit them in the situation. 2, if it is justifiable in an open and democratic society that is based on equality and freedom. Those 2 conditions. You can't just come and say, now we have to limit the rights of all these preachers. We have to limit the rights of all these Christians. No, there are 2 preconditions. The conditions are, it must be reasonable, it must be justifiable. And that is why, when the Civil Rights Commission went to the Parliament and said, no, let's limit the right of association for Christians and for religious people. Let's limit the right to belong. The Parliament said, no. That is unreasonable. That's unjustifiable. And that's why they kicked them out. I'm trying to drive today the fact that constitutional rights are not hierarchical. They're indivisible. They are not vertical. They're horizontal. All rights are on the same level. The right to own land, the right to your own religion, freedom of expression, the right to life, the right to education, the right to expression. All those are on the same level. None more important than the other. Let me give you a few examples here on the limitation of those rights. When there is a conflict in our rights. I have written down here. A Christian school may refuse to take a child into the school because that child is not a Christian. And the school say they have a right to practice their own religion and culture. But the parent of that child may argue that it is their right to send their child to any school of their choice because the child has a right to education. The conflict is about the right to education versus the right to practice your own religion. And that's what the determination by the Constitutional Court shall be based on. How do we balance these people's right to practice their own religion with the parents' right to enroll their child at the nearest school? You understand what I'm saying to you? 2, a second example is you may believe that you are exercising your freedom of expression by carrying a poster that says, Jews go back to Israel. But Jewish people have the right to protection against discrimination and to practice their own religion. So your right could probably be limited because this is a form of hate speech and it's creating dislike or hatred for Jewish people by your actions. The law is clear on those. And that is why the Portfolio Committee said, as and when cases come before the courts, those determinations can be made without restricting the freedom of association, the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of conscience, those 4 freedoms. You can't take from the Christian community the freedom of religion because people are spreading people with doom. Because there is an act that prohibits you from doing anything harmful to your fellow citizens. So that is why the doom guy was convicted. You can't say, no, let's regulate religion. Let's bring all the churches under Civil Rights Commission because pastors are raping women in church. Because rape is a crime. And there is an agency appointed to deal with that. The cops will arrest you. You'll be brought before the judiciary. The state will prosecute you. And the judiciary will make a determination. So when there is a conflict of those rights, that per case, you can't have blanket rulings. I don't like Italians. Why? No, that Italian guy killed my father. No, let's regulate against Italianism. It's stupid. No, there is a tendency that Muslims are violent. So let's regulate all the mosques. It's a stupid thing. Let me just say in closing, you must understand what I've been trying to say to you in terms of none of the rights being hierarchical and none of the rights being a necessary evil. They all are deemed sacrosanct, holy in the Constitution. But then there is also a belief that the Constitution was written in a vacuum. South Africa does as it wish. But South Africa is a member state to the United Nations, and I'll tabulate them and I can't discuss them all. And if you want to know what informed the kind of constitution we have as a constitutional democracy, you need to go into international human rights documents that South Africa both signed and ratified, bound itself to observe. The 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, though it's not a legally binding document, but it has the moral and political authority in international communities. The 1953 Convention on Political Rights, the 1957 Convention on Nationality of Married Women, those are some of the rights, some of the international covenants we signed. The 1966 International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, that is key, 1966. And also the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. 1966, again, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination. 1979, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, of course. But in 1981, the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights. And the 1989 Convention on the Rights of the Child, the International Labour Organization Act and all. You must go. Now, these are international covenants South Africa has. They are also not in hierarchical order. At the United Nations level, member countries bound themselves to sign and to ratify, to accept for practice these various laws, and none of them are in hierarchical order. So what have I accomplished through this talk? One, to let those affected, especially the Christian community, the Hindu community, the Muslim community, do not be bullied into thinking that religious rights are insignificant. It's a lie. Do not be bullied into thinking that no, certain rights are stronger than others. I will reiterate deliberately. The right to land is as central to the Constitution as the right to religion, because both are constitutional rights. The right to conscience, to practice what you believe is true without trampling underfoot another's belief, is as sacrosanct as the right to life. And the second part of my objective is to tell the bullies out there, the pastors fraternals, the Civil Rights Commission, the self-appointed ambassadors and law enforcers, you have to respect the constitutional rights of others, to realize that you can't frivolously trample underfoot people's rights. I hope this makes sense. And if you have any inquiry regarding this, if you need any further elucidation, contact me. My number is 079-695-8908. And my email is chi@chimikotu.com. You can go to our Facebook page, Chimikotu. And don't forget that we are on the road as the Anti-Regulation of Religion Summit. There was a very interesting invitation by the Soweto Ministers Fraternal last week that they will be having a meeting on the 21st of August where we shall have a dialogue on regulation or anti-regulation. If that agenda still stays, the Anti-Regulation of Religion Summit shall attend the Soweto Ministers Fraternal of the 21st of August 2019. But if the agenda has changed, we have no interest to do that. They said, look, we've had Bishop Sona present his view of how the process unfolds. And for balance, there is need. And for fairness, there is need for us to have a different perspective on how others saw the process. The way he sees the process is not how I see the process. The explanation he gave there is not the explanation I would give. And freedom of speech, freedom of expression is inherent in the Constitution. So other people felt like, let Kotu and company also come and express their views. Because the Soweto Ministers Fraternal is not for or against regulation. It has to make its own determination. So if the invitation still stands, on the 21st of August, 4 days after Newcastle, we shall go to the Soweto Ministers Fraternal. But for now, the Anti-Regulation of Religion Summit is in Newcastle on the 17th of August and in the Val on the 24th of September. For all other inquiries, contact us. This is Dr. Shimi Chi Aubagakotu, and I think this talk gave some sense. May the Lord greatly bless and keep you.